Welcome. It's high time that we did this. Today we've got the official, definitive list of the 23 objectively best soundtracks of the year 2023. There's just no dispute about anything on this list. These are the facts. Now, this list will contain film soundtracks, TV soundtracks, game soundtracks. They're all on the table as long as they released an album in the year 2023. It doesn't matter when the show came out, it matters when the musical album came out. That's the rules I've made up anyway. A few words about this year before we begin. This list was challenging. You can tell because it's February and that's when I'm putting this out. Though that happened last year as well. I think it's getting harder each year because I'm actually listening to more each year. And listening to more doesn't actually help you make a list. I think it actually just makes it harder. The more things that you think of, the more things you're aware of, the more stuff you're trying to squeeze in there. This year, I found the bottom half of the list particularly difficult. I think my top dozen or so on today's list are pretty firm and solid. I was like, this is definitely going to be on the list. I don't think anything's going to drop it off. But the bottom half of the list, that's in flux for sure. Even just the last few weeks, the last week, I've been mixing them all about. Took off a few things that I'm sad I took off, but added some other things. But now they're locked in forever, for all time. And now we're going to go through them together one by one, starting at 23, and we'll go all the way down to number 1, the absolute greatest soundtrack of 2023. Everybody agrees. So grab some water, and with zero more ado, let's jump into the first one. Number 23 on this list of soundtracks for 2023. Wonderwell is a gentle and lush little film soundtrack that I find very easy to like. It's got this really beautiful and delicate main theme by the late and great Angelo Badalamenti, and it's used well throughout. You know I love when a score is just bathed in its main theme. It captures a really effective sadness in just a few well-placed notes. The flutes and strings are very inviting. This score is played by the London Symphony Orchestra, so of course it sounds good. And this is one of the newest / latest additions to my list this year. I only just came across it recently, but it's been growing on me rapidly, so I'm very glad to have squeezed it in right here. It's Wonderwell. Martin Phipps brings his dynamic, Baroque kind of sound he's always so good at to this Ridley Scott epic. And it's placed somewhere between elegant drama and comic farce, which is quite a balance to maintain. But between godfatherish, mournful horns and elegant, cultured strings and opulent, sophisticated choirs, the balance is something I find wonderful to listen to. You know, I often find Martin Phipps music to be really good to do other work to, like writing and stuff, when you need a focus. And I mean that as a compliment. This is good music. Napoleon. This is quite a unique score by a composer I'm not familiar with for a film I know absolutely nothing about. Weepy, large, dramatic choirs are joined by cool synths to create a kind of enormous gothic flavour. I don't know what this movie's about at all, but the music's certainly got a sci-fi futuristic flavour with, Baroque choirs and pipe organ and electric guitar. It's really quite a mix. Sometimes it does get a bit noisy for me. For every beautiful classical choir piece, there's something disturbing and messy and sound designy. It certainly leans into horror at points. And there are these great moments though where the future synth and the gorgeous choirs do come together, and it reminds me a bit of Warhammer Darktide from last year, which is obviously pretty cool. I do wish there was a little more recognisable melody here and a little more shape, but look, I enjoy what it is. It's great. The Devil Conspiracy. This is a large and expansive video game score by Pinar Toprak and a team of contributing composers, all continuing James Horner's original Avatar sound. So you can bet there are strong woodwinds and optimistic chanting choirs, and really, there's actually a lot of just pleasant music here that really creates a great atmosphere. A lot of it seems to be describing the lush, natural world of Pandora, where the game is obviously set. It does leave me wanting, in some areas, for some more memorable moments, like defined action set pieces or something. It just doesn't do anything quite as striking as James Horner or Simon Franklin have done for the films. But, that's all right. This strikes me more as a gentle world-building exercise, and in that, it absolutely succeeds. It's good stuff. Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. This past year, Joseph Shirley took the reins from Ludwig Göransson on two big franchises, The Mandalorian and Creed. And for what it's worth, I think he's done a really good job on both. It must be so hard to take over from someone else who has famously given these stories, these franchises, such a big and unique musical style. And then what can you do? You either continue to keep that musical style, you respect what's come before, or you change it up completely. And in both cases, Joseph Shirley has actually continued the established musical style. But it hasn't become boring. It's really genuinely good. I mean, I'm saying all this just to say I don't know why Creed 3 isn't higher on my list, and I don't know why The Mandalorian isn't even on my list. I suppose it was just a competitive year, and it doesn't feel like either of these scores did anything really bold or new that we haven't heard in the respective previous entries for these franchises. They're just super solid, and I don't mean to say that they're boring or uninteresting in any way. Creed 3 continues in Ludwig Göransson's template of really punchy and cool, rousing music with unexpected uses of the human voice throughout. I'm super into it. Creed 3. Welcome to a bleak, anxious world of despair. Diablo 4 is a macabre, atmospheric soundtrack that makes me feel like there are bugs crawling up my legs. It's extremely evocative. The whole score is drenched in the reverb of a shadowy church. They found a great sound for this one. It really speaks to that medieval fantasy horror featuring the most evil of demons. And it's got this great sense of history too. Like each piece is telling the story of ancient creatures and places. The music just makes me so restless and uncomfortable. So you may ask why I put it on here. Well, maybe I like being uncomfortable. This is a really solid superhero soundtrack and has some of my favourite music by Benjamin Wallfisch. It's doing an awful lot of work in some set pieces to bring a lot of gravitas to a film that I'm otherwise quite reluctant to care about, honestly. There's some really nice use of piano in some of the sweeping action tracks that has stuck with me, and there are some huge moments of grandeur. I mean, some of them, like the one you just heard or that you're hearing now, I kind of think is honestly too grand and wonderful for the movie and the scene that it scored. But I don't mind, because as a listener outside of the movie, it's a great piece. This score also has a bunch of Danny Elfman's Batman theme, and that doesn't hurt either. The music of Genshin Impact is a relatively recent discovery for me. There's a lot of music out there already, to say the least, and this latest expansion release is full of wonderful music. And it's bright, colourful, and very playful. Playful is the big word, I think. Throughout the album, the music dabbles with a whole range of styles and modes, but also doesn't forget to hold on to some lovely themes throughout. There's over 3 hours of music here, so I'm hoping to spend a lot more time in the future delving into this world, including the previous scores from previous expansions. Back into the superhero realm now with the third Guardians of the Galaxy. John Murphy is composing this time round, and the music has been taken in a very different direction to the previous soundtracks. This is a really emotional score. John Murphy leans into the tragedy and sadness at the heart of the film, and I love that about it. Although there's a little bit less action fun than the previous entries, it's still quite space operatic, and there's just much more heartbreak and sentimentality. I didn't expect to like it as much as I do, but it's great. Guardians of the Galaxy. going from a dark Marvel score to a dark Star Wars score. This is definitely Star Wars in dark mode. Everything's rather bleak and grim and hard and overbearing. There's more spooky, creepy, shadowy stuff in here than I expected. And a lot of the 4-hour runtime, you heard me, of the score is atmospheric, painting a range of scary, foreboding backdrops. But when the action kicks in, it's thrilling. There's just nothing like Star Wars music. That descriptive brass and those rich, agile strings. I swear that with Star Wars music, you can always see these worlds so clearly. The empires and the blasters and the lightsabers. And like all of the best Star Wars music, Jedi Survivor does push a bit outside the established template with some unique orchestrations and styles that we haven't heard in this world before. The first way I want to describe this soundtrack is just by saying wow. It kind of blew me away. In some areas, it's deceptively simple, but then it really just hits you, especially inside the movie. This is one of the best scores for picture on my list this year, I think. It really imbues each scene of the film with distinct energy, often anxious energy. It's got absolutely thrilling moments, but the thing I was most struck by was how incredibly anxious this score is. It elevates my heart rate, it's physically effective and affecting. I'm in awe. And as well as scoring significant set pieces with memorable original music, Naoki Sato also brings back the original Godzilla main title theme, just like Bear McCreary did a few years ago in his Godzilla score. In an effective way for some pretty incredible, like, wow, Godzilla is wild moments. But yeah, basically this is really engrossing stuff. It wowed me. Play it loud. I'm honestly really not a fan of the Fast and Furious movies at all, but Brian Tyler knows what he's doing. This is really impressive action scoring. It aims to be pretty grand and epic at times, with some choral punctuations and what I assume is a villain theme that dominates throughout the score, going head to head with Tyler's heroic themes, some of which are now several years old and well established in my mind. But what's so important about the success of this music, I think, is that it doesn't forget to have fun. This could easily be too serious, and at a couple of points actually, maybe it is, but for the most part, it's just a good time. It's John Powell doing a colourful animated score. Of course it's good. I mean, it's not How to Train Your Dragon, but not much is. Though this one is also about flying creatures, they're just a little bit smaller. And what a perfect provocation the concept of flight is for music, no matter the composer, but especially for John Powell. Anyway, this is tremendously enjoyable light adventure scoring with several good action cues and a few of those flourishes of wonder, awe and delight that Powell is just the master of. His music is just so dexterous and always sounds good. The particular quality and texture of his orchestra is definitely one of my favourites out there. It's always creative too. There are surprises in here, like a bit of electric guitar at one point. Good stuff. And just like that, we're already up to the top 10. Let's do it. Right at the end of the year, we got this new adventure score by Bear McCreary and his Sparks and Sounds team, and it's really just what you'd expect, which is a great thing. A memorable, noble main theme on French horn, rich strings to build out the world, and all imbued with the sense of wonder and magic that you need for a Percy Jackson story. The only damning thing to say about this score is that it's really not that exciting compared to Rings of Power or other recent Bear McCreary scores, but that's just because they've been so consistently terrific. Honestly, this is absolutely great too. If you have any sense of nostalgia for the great classical inspired sci-fi scores, Star Trek, Star Wars, etc., then this is like a warm blanket. A 72-track, 4.5-hour long warm blanket packed end to end with classical orchestral adventure film score writing. It's almost too much to comprehend, really. But it does everything that you'd expect. Bold, brassy, Star Trek-y themes, expressive string ostinatos for Star Wars-like action cues, and all sorts of overt classical references to stuff like Holst's The Planets, of course. And the cues are long here. I love these long set-piece cues where the music really just gets to tell the story. Anyway, the Orville has wonderful music. How lucky are we to have this? This score is absolute genius. It's so fast and clever and tight, and it absolutely has to be to keep up with the vivid torrent of ideas on screen throughout the movie. Daniel Pemberton's themes for this world are so distinct and memorable, just like the different animation styles and frame rates that are used for different characters from different worlds on screen. Pemberton uses such diverse musical styles to represent each theme and idea. It's a miracle that it all comes together into something cohesive at the end. Top stuff. This ultra cool video game score by Gary Scheinman and Bear McCreary really drew me in with some ear-catching melodies, often led by a dynamic female voice. It's very much in the McCreary world of moody, appealingly shaped themes riddled throughout a heavy but not exhausting fantasy world. From track one, it's so instantly full of heartfelt, striving character. Great incorporation of some trap beats, some heavy drums and agile piano amongst the swirling strings. I also just love how cohesive and distinct its style is, its sound. You only need to hear the start of a track to go, that sounds like Forspoken. Laura Cartman is back and I love what she's done here. It's got this absolutely thrilling, let's go, giddy up superhero theme. I initially thought it was a bit of a shame that previous themes for Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel weren't reprised here. But hey, that's Marvel for you. They don't build on previous music much ever. But this is incredibly fun new material. And just like with Miss Marvel last year, I'm also just so impressed by the quality of Laura Cartman's action writing in general. It's not run-of-the-mill. It doesn't disappoint. It's a breath of fresh air. Well, we're into the top 5 now. And not to ruin it, but there probably aren't many more surprises to come out of my list this year. Not big surprises. My top 5 is pretty mainstream, I think. But enough talk. Let's get into it. The Maestro is back with Indiana Jones. Expectations were high and I wasn't disappointed. Of course, a lot of this album is retreads of Indiana Jones of the past or some, action cues that were so similar to things that we've heard before that they may as well have been a needle drop. But as well as that, there's still so much new magic here. Helena's theme is this grand new concert piece, and the way it instantly dives straight back into that romantic classical writing with large, shameless melodic leaps. Everything from John Williams is such a gift. This one's already been talked about so much in the soundtrack community. Scores for Christopher Nolan movies always seem to make waves one way or another. And so I don't know that there's much more that I have to say about it that hasn't been said, but I know that everybody doesn't love it, that's for sure. But as for me, I'm totally on board with this. I think Oppenheimer is an incredible follow-up to Ludwig Göransson's first Christopher Nolan collaboration, Tenet, and it creates such a gloomy, tragic vibe with closely recorded, expressive strings which sketch out these intricate patterns that feel like human thoughts at points. It succeeds at creating this atmosphere of an existential fairy tale, a little bit like another one of my favourite soundtracks of recent years, Justin Hurwitz's First Man. Beauty and dread, horror and wonder, all at the same time. Just jaw-droppingly beautiful. That is my primary reaction to most of Baldur's Gate 3 by Borislav Slavov. This is the power of melodic music. Like a worm that crawls into your brain and lives there, this music immediately got deep under my skin. And yeah, it's all about the melodies here, the stunningly beautiful, lyrical melodies, sometimes performed unexpectedly simply, sometimes performed unexpectedly quietly, unexpectedly soulfully. These are just some of the best themes of the year, and they're done so much justice across the score. It's got some of the best songs on a soundtrack in 2023 as well. Divinity Original Sin 2 from a few years back sounded great as well, but I think this is a whole new level. Borislav Slavov has received a lot of praise this year, and I think it's all deserved and then some. I never expected to be so very charmed by this, but I absolutely was and am. Brian Tyler went all out on this one. Not only does it cleverly incorporate heaps of previous Mario musical material, it makes it new and fresh and consistent and tight. It's filled with such visceral joy it makes you feel like you could fly. Even the villain theme is fun. And again, the orchestra just sounds so good in this. It's a classic case of Brian Tyler featuring drums and a big orchestra, and his sound is so perfected at this point. I can't believe how punchy it sounds. I'm so happy to have something like this, something so colourful and fun near the top of my list this year. It's not all about doom and gloom. And I haven't seen this movie, but I have certainly spent many, many hours of the past year listening to this amazing score. Mission Impossible has always had good music. I mean, it started with the brilliant themes by Lalo Schifrin in the 1960s. And for the movies, Danny Elfman, Hans Zimmer, Michael Giacchino, Joe Kramer, and Lorne Balfe have all put in stellar work. But I think this latest soundtrack is my favourite of the bunch. Lorne Balfe returns to take the melodrama to the next level, and he so perfectly musically represents the feeling of racing against time, of trying to go faster, of being pushed to your limits, of being up against impossible odds. And it's all done in this larger-than-life romantic style, where everything is dialed up to 11, and every emotion is the biggest thing you've ever felt. Dead Reckoning is much more emotional than any previous Mission Impossible score. It feels like this dark, exciting nightmare swirling all around you. I still don't know how some of these tracks make me feel the way they do. And the bongos! The coolest bongos of 2023, period. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning is an enormous and epic work by Lorne Balfe. And make sure you check out the expanded release, where they've got about 3 hours of music. It's glorious. Wow, we've made it, the end of another year. Do you know this is the 5th year that I've done this? And I'm so glad to have you watching. Just thanks for watching. It really is just a treat for me to delve into my favorite soundtracks at the end of each year and just think about them more and make these lists. I really enjoy it. Okay, here's a couple of interesting things about this year. I had 14 film scores on my list, 2 TV scores and 7 game scores. So TV really dropped down. Last year I had more TV scores than game scores. I think I had 6 TV and 5 games. But yeah, only 2 TV scores this year is a big shift, and 7 game scores and 14, like I said, 14 film scores. So I don't know if that says something about the world or me or both. But my goal when I do this next year, at the end of this year, is going to be to track some of these stats a bit more over the years that I've been doing this, to see if maybe, you know, the media I like, where I'm finding my favorite scores, it is shifting over time. I don't know. We'll track that. And let's see. Quite a diverse range of composers this year. Not like last year, where I think I had a whole bunch of just the same composers repeated on the list. This year I had Bear McCreary 3 times, fair enough, one of the most prolific composers around at the moment, and he's sharing a lot of load with other composers, and Brian Tyler twice. So there you go, both of them. And you know what? There is so much good music out there each year. I'm sure there are things I didn't even get around to listening to that are superb from 2023. So I would love if you had any favorites that weren't on my list, please chuck them in the comments, because I would really love to know about them. And if you've liked this video, which, I mean, duh, then I am almost absolutely 100% certain that you will also like Mutant Reviewers, which is this little site with some lovely people who review all kinds of interesting films and media. You should definitely check it out. Go to mutantreviewersmovies.com and have a look. They'll definitely be talking about some movies that you also like talking about. And with that, that's me done for another year. Is this video going to be my only video of the year on YouTube like it was last year, or am I going to make other things and put them up soon? Well, stay tuned.